Hello. So this time I want to talk about specifically how Abysscraft win in the forest matchup, um, and more broadly how mid-range and control decks of other crafts face forest. And it matters because outside of aggro, forest is the only craft that forces other crafts to build their decks so that they would have to beat forest before anywhere from turn 7 to turn 9. But in my experience, if forest get to 9 play point, generally I would die to roach if I haven't killed them. So that's kind of why it matters for Abyss, because I am a control player, so I don't build combos or other aggressive options in my deck, and so to have any chance against Forest, I would have to put in some effect damage storm or combo of sorts. In this video, we're gonna talk about some Abyss deck building options, and these kind of carry through to other crafts, other matchups. This is a deck I've been testing with after the tournament, and so I put in two lesser devious mummies. I took out a Reaper because I needed room. I took out all three rubies, the neutral 2-drop that shuffles the card back, and then I put in two Shadow Crypt Memorials, and then the rest are still the same. I left Dark Seal even there because it's kind of good in the room match up, um, and also sometimes Sword, which is actually weird, but Sword don't play aggro anymore, they're just really grindy, and also in the Puppet artifact matchup. But I would put a third Mino back in there eventually after some testing. But so what I found was in the Sword matchup, um, and also the Puppet matchup. Sometimes I'm most likely to be the one that's a evolve point down if they piloted their decks really well, and Mino is kind of the way out of that. Otherwise, I'm just like always a point down, and it has come to the point where in the Sword matchup, I have a replay later to illustrate this. It would actually take a Casitas top deck to win because of how many words and board floods and Evo control they have. And when I was testing the deck, I actually took the Casitas out of the deck, and then I faced Puppet again. And I was actually only playing one Ruby at the time because that was the only spot I had left. And after that game, I put the Casitas back, and so Ruby's no longer in the deck. And the deck list is really tight in space that I could only play two Lesser Devious Mummies and Shadow Crypt Memorial. So the way you play against Forest in this matchup is you drop Orthos on 2, you drop Shadow Crypt on Memorial on 3, so you have 4 4 Shadows by now. And if you're going second, you would evolve the Devious Lesser Mummy and go face with it for 4 damage. Or you do it on 5 and 6 if you went first. And then if you went first, on 5 you're gonna play aragavy, Eternal Hunter, and evolve for 3 damage face because that's the only other way for you to do damage to them before turn 8. And our goal is to use Cerberus, combo with Shadow Crypt, and kill them, end the game. Ideally, the maximum amount of damage that Abyss can do in one turn before 10 is with 2 Shadow Crypt Memorial on 8, and you play Cerberus and you Super Evo a Ghost, and that's 15 damage, all going face. But if I'm playing 2 Shadow Crypt Memorials and totally in the deck, that's probably not going to happen, most likely. And so like somewhere we have to find damage, and on 7, there's another opportunity for you to evolve Devious Lesser Mummy to face, and that's with Olivia. And that's why I'm playing at least 2 of these guys. So once you do it when you have your first Evo point, that's turn 4 or turn 5. Or if you want to have a better curve, you do it on turn 6, right? And then on turn 7, you pray that you can do it with Olivia Super Evo. But you're kind of hungry on Shadow. So if you play on curve with 1 card every single turn, you're gonna, from turn 2 on, you're gonna have exactly 6, which is what is necessary for Cerberus to activate her buff effects. So if we play 2 Lesser Mummy, that's 8 Shadows down the drain, then the chances are we might not actually be able to activate Cerberus. So you would play Cerberus and then your ghosts are still 1/1s. So that's kind of the problem, and that's why I don't play the 3rd Devious Lesser Mummy. So to build Shadow, you would have to play Orthus a lot, the 2-drop word. Because Fanfare, it builds 2 Shadow, and when it dies, that's another 1, so that's 3. So say you played Orthus on 2, play the Shadow Crypt on 3, you have 4, and then on 4, you evolve face with the Mummy, you consumed all of 4, right? And then your Mummy and Orthus dies, so you have 2. Let's say you played another Orthus on 4 with Devious going second, so now you have 4 again. And then on 7, we consumed it for the Olivia play, and then say Olivia and the Devious side, so now we have 2. Right, so we have turn 5, 6 empty right now, and we have only 2 Shadows, so we need 4 Shadows. So, and then say on 5 you had Aragavy, Eternal Hunter, and then they died. That's 3. So on turn 6, if we, with this line of play, we need to build 3 Shadows. So on 6, we need to play 3 2-drops, or we play Orthus, and a 4-drop probably Siri. Mino also works, so because Mino also generates a skeleton when it dies. And then on turn 7 you're gonna kill the skeleton. Well, on turn 7 you would play the skeleton naked and threaten to build a 3/1 next turn if it lives with the Cerberus. But you know, the smart opponent might not kill it, so you don't have enough shadow, but you can run into their board to kill it. So, and that's kind of the game plan going into the forest matchup. So as you can see, like it's super tight for shadow, and like there are just not enough for your devious lesser mummy by turn 8, which is what is required for us to do to be able to kill them. The other thing is you might have an opportunity to play the second crypt, and that's if you evolve the devious lesser mummy on 5, but you're kind of fighting for board on 5, since that's when both players have their first evo. And if you evo face, you kind of want some other thing to happen. Well, if the opponent is not aggro, then it doesn't really matter, because they're most likely going to trade into your mummy. And then on 6, you might play Apollo and Crypt, so that kind of solves our turn 6 shadow issue, or that's kind of our opportunity to build shadow. Or you play series, so by turn 7, you would have your first Super Evo, so use Super Evo series, and then play Shadow Crypt, your second Shadow Crypt Memorial. Yeah, and that's kind of how tight this deck is. And if you go past that point, you don't really care, because at that point you go back to your control play, because you failed to kill them on turn 8. So that's so you don't really need the third Devious Lesser Mummy and the third Crypt. That's kind of what's happening with this deck list right now. And then so from the comments of the last video, you know, some people mentioned that they're new to Shadowverse, and I was thinking if there's a budget way of building Abyss, and this is what I came up. So the budget is that there is no 0 legendary in the deck. I think I've heard people criticize Abyss being the wallet craft, so you know, I kind of was interested to see if it's possible to build a budget version. So let me kind of talk about deck building a little bit and explain how I got from my control version to the budget version. So let's copy this deck. Let's see. Alright, so we copied that deck. So Casitas is kind of out. We're not really worried about it. The only games that it matters is in the Sword and Puppet Portal matchup. So let's start with it. So Cerberus, what's a replacement for Cerberus? Well, I mean, let's first see what it does. It heals. It does affect face damage through words. And the total damage sums to 6, so that's if you run both of the, well, if you run the 2/1, well, the 4/1 when you summon, and you use necromancy, when that dies, you do 2 damage to the opponent's face, and you super evo your Cerberus, and because that's the only 1-drop die that game was what you just killed, so you're gonna summon that back, reanimate it twice, and then you run those 3 into wards, say like, you're facing sword, and they have, you know, the 8-drop, and there's a wall of wards, right? So this would clear, well, along with the 3/2 Mimi and Coco that you just summoned, you would clear all of the wards, and then your super evo goes into the giant body, right? So Cerberus does 6 effect damage to face. Everything else, there's not really an option that replaces it. So to replace Cerberus, we look for something that super evo, when it super evos, does 6 damage to face. And Mistress of the Fang does exactly that. When it's super evo, it gains 3 attack and has 3 storm. So that's going to be our budget Cerberus. Right. So for Medusa, it clears 3 bodies off the board. That's kind of easy, I guess, way to find a replacement. And that's going to be our Wukong. So since we don't have Cerberus, our Shadow Crypt is not going to be bursting face damage. So if you summon Wukong on 7 and have 2 other ghosts and it's evolved, right? That's going to clear 3 bodies, and that's the same as playing Medusa on 7, with the upside that you still have 3 play points left over. So technically you can also play Shadow Crypt on 7, and then play Wukong, because Crypt gives you shadows. That's some extra shadows you could use to activate Wukong's Necromancy 8. So that's going to be our budget Medusa. Next is Olivia. Olivia heals. There's not that many heal options, but there are draw card options in the neutral package. And that's going to be our Seraph Tiding. And then Aragavy, Eternal Hunter. This card fights clears board, but there's not really any other thing that's budget and clears board. But in the context of facing Forest, what it does is it does 3 damage to face. So our budget version of that is going to be the Raid of Serpents, right? Let's see, and because we don't really have our Cerberus to combo anymore, I would take out the Lesser Mummy, and taking it out is a logical choice, also because it's Necromancy 4. It's contesting with our Wukong, right? But what's that replacement? And that's going to be Yuna. So with Wukong, when you play on 7 to play board to mimic Medusa, right? You only summon 1 ghost when it's evolved, and if you don't have Trip, you're kind of screwed. But there's this card that generates Ghost that's not summoned onto the board, and it adds a ghost to your hand, and that's going to be our Yuna. So we play this on 4, 5, 6, maybe, you know, and it would generate you at least 3 ghosts, and you save those ghosts for either face damage or when you play Wukong on 7 or post 7. And the other upside is when Wukong evolves by itself on 7, it is also a body that could attack, so you could clear up to 4 bodies with Bane and evolve, right, on the enemy's side. So it's actually better than Medusa. And then we're still playing the triple Divine Thunder for some control, but you know, you could take one out. If I would take one out if I'm not expecting the game to go past turn 10, but we're kind of not really having the push hour outside of Storm. So you know, it's up to you, but you know, I like to play at 3. Well, actually, we could take this out and play an extra. Oh, I don't want this animated. We could play the 3 Shadowcraft Memorial since we have 3 Wukons. And then Apollo, it's for the sword matchup. Um, and that's kind of that. Since we could clear an extra body with Wukon, so Reaper's Slash is not really necessary because it's only used in the sword matchup, and the other one is the room matchup. So I would play a third Mino for the extra Evo control against sword. So this is how I came up with the budget version of this, right? So no legendaries for this. It's just budget, and I've thrown in some replays later in the video where I played various versions of the decks that I'm going to talk about, and I was in AA rank, and it's possible to win games, although it might be a struggle, and you kind of have to know what you're doing. You already know what key targets you need to clear to be able to win those matchups, so it takes more game knowledge, and skills, I guess. And then the other option that I've kind of explored is to build oversized bodies with overvalued cards for their costs, so you can squeeze in more damage early game through mid game, and then hopefully finish with Mysteries of the Fang. And that's still for Forest. So first we have Barrow, Nightmare Incarnate. If you go second, then you coin or you use the extra play point to play this on turn 1. Forest actually has no way to clear it. Well, maybe that, yeah. So even if they played a fairy turn 1 and then they generate 2 fairies on turn 2, they just simply don't have the play point to do 3 damage to a follower. Well, actually they do, but so what they would do is they would play a turn 1 fairy, run it in, and then play a turn 2 fairy, and then bug bite the 1 cost spell and do 2 random damage to a follower. So they could still take it out on turn 2. But generally speaking, we're expecting this body to stick. And because we're playing 1 copy of Balto. So what Balto does is it has countdown and do the damage to those leaders, but because it's a countdown, it takes time for the damage to happen. So let's say that by turn 8 we wanted to do full damage. You're gonna have to play this on 3, and there's only 1 turn 3, which is why we play only 1 copy of Balto. You get it, you get it. You don't. And it has a body, so it's better than Rage Serpents in that regard. It does damage to the opponent and trades on board. So that's kind of why we play it at 1. You get it down 3, you play it, you kind of don't want to see it for the rest of the game. And then there's Armor's Necromancer at 4. It's one of the, I believe, only 2 options on 4 that has 5 attack. The other one being a enhanced Indomitable Fighter. That's the neutral basic 2-drop that has the enhanced effect. And this one has the upside that it summons 2 ghosts, which could, clear 2 fairies. And your other followers who played on turn 1, 2, and 3, depending on if you could win second or not, could, go face and ignore board. And you're pushing damage that way. And because we're not having legendaries in our budget consideration, and we lack threats in our deck, I've decided to try Ghost Juggler in this variation to revive the Yuna to generate more ghosts in your hand for the Wukong combo. But if you feel your lack card draws, you could switch Ghost Juggler to Seraph Exciting, the 3 cost mana, the 3 play point spell that draws 2 cards from the neutral section. And that's kind of the budget variation that I came up with. And then because I'm playing control, and I put in the combo in the deck, and they're not that consistent if I'm not going 3 copies at all times. So there's this other variation where we go 3 copies of every piece of combo. So the devious is just the 3rd copy is not there to be played. It's just that we draw it early. That's the same for the Shadowcraft Memorial. We kind of cut Dark Seal Demon down to 1 and played Seraph Exciting at 3, and that kind of fills our curve pretty nicely on 5. And 6, depending on when you play your Devious Lesser Army and when you play your Rage of Serpents. I don't like seeing Rage of Serpents in my hand at all, unless it's pushing for lethal. So unless I need it in that matchup, I don't want to see it at all. So I've tried it at 1, and even at 1 it's really bad when you are in the aggro matchup. But we're kind of just playing 2 here to increase our consistency to at least draw 1 in the first 8 turns. So in every other matchup, we could at least expect it somehow. And the other thing is, if we don't play something as cheap for face damage, we might overdraw and have a bunch of cards stuck in your hand and not be able to play. So Rage of Serpents kind of just feels really nicely with Seraph Exciting, so you could play them on the same turn or split them, depending on how good or bad your draws are. And the replay I had for this, we were super efficient with our play points. And because we're not expecting the game to go on to turn 10, so I kind of took out the 3rd Divine Thunder, which were saved to target the mech on 10, the Puppet 10 drop, the Amelia, well, the Amelias can still be cleared, and also the Shikiami. So that's that, and that's sort of our deck for today. And then we'll watch some replays. So I recorded some ladder gameplay and also some scrims versus Forestcraft. And something I am surprised to learn is that Forest actually breaks. It's not breaking in the sense where other crafts break, that they have giant drops in their hand and they can't play early game. That's not how Forest breaks. How Forest breaks is that they don't get the cards they need. Like sometimes they don't, they start with the card draw amulet that they need for the long game, or they don't draw the Auric players they need for the early game, or they don't draw the Fairy Generation, or by the time they are expecting Roach, they don't draw Roach. So like Forest actually breaks, or at least that's how the current widely spread common lists on the internet are. Maybe the top players run their own list, but that's not the list I found. So I'm actually just surprised that Forest breaks, and that's kind of how I was able to beat for some of these games, not all, but some of these games, like that they make weird plays that I don't think make sense. But then, talking to them after knowing what they had in their hand, I was like, oh, they didn't have guard draw, they didn't have roach, they didn't have ways to generate more fairies, and they were forced to, trade on board early through mid game, and they just kind of ran out of juice. That's kind of what happened um, in some of these replays, unfortunately. But I'm not interested in playing the budget deck my entire day, so this is kind of what we get. Um, but yeah, I was actually surprised to see the budget version overwhelming the forest. Well, at least in this version, I'm not sure how it would do in against other variations of the forest deck, but yeah. But yeah, another thing is after I started playing the combo in the control deck, I think it actually got me to the next group because it actually had the win rate to threaten lethal more with the crypt on the board. So people had to play around it, or didn't play around it and had the combo, and the game was over. So it's kind of surprising, but I am kind of just learning the game through playing control, and that's kind of what I enjoy. What I enjoy is me and my opponent has a deck. We spend our efforts thinking about it, struggling about it, and then we get into a game. Both of us kind of get all of our ideas out, and then one overvalues the other one, and then that makes the winner a better deck builder. And that's kind of the gameplay I like. I don't like playing aggro, but there's combo, and I have to be able to counter combos. So I have to have my own combo, and that's kind of yeah. Oh, and the thing I forgot to mention is with the play that we're gonna do, like if say we Rage of Serpents and evolve to aragaves, right? So we do like 6 damage short phase, and then another 2. So like we're at 12 health. If the meta solved and Forest players knows that's our game plan, all they need to do is play the 3-drop draw card and on 3, play the 3-drop and on 4, and then on 5 they go Fairy Fairy, evolve Roach face, and that's what 3 plus 2, that's 5 damage. And then the next turn they do the same thing. They go 3 1-drops, Roach Super Evolve, that's 6 damage, right? 1 2 3, and then Roach is 4th. Okay, so Roach has 4 attack. Super Evolve is 3, that's 7, right? And then 5 plus 7, that's exactly 12. So there are ways Forest players can counter, but they would have to keep the amulet and roach in the beginning of the game when they're mulliganing. And the way we play around that is by having storm and other ways to do face damage and not evolving our aragavy on 5 and 6. So if you do adopt this line of play, just remember that that you could be lethal on turn 6 by the smart or knowledgeable Forest player. So keep that in mind. So after learning that Forest actually breaks, the matchups are no longer that scary for me at least. Because I know like from 1 through 7, they could be just looking for their combo. They don't have it in their hand, and that's kind of what makes the evolving Alagadi might be safe. So it kind of depends on your hand, depending on whether you believe you're gonna draw your pieces or not. So we were kind of playing Exodias against Forest players. And so hopefully you'll enjoy these budget replays in the beginning. I do have the regular control mid-range scrims with Forest later, but these are just kind of the first replays that I wanted to get out of the way for the budget decks to kind of show that they could work, especially in the Forest matchup. I'm not sure if people are interested in the mostly the Forest matchup, but if you play aggro, it seems to me that you just have a better chance in the Forest matchup. But I'm doing this with the interest that I find out what I should do with a control deck or a mid-range deck or a deck that doesn't have combos. But yeah. And so over here, this replay is actually not the budget deck. I had very few of the budget replays. I just wanted to test them out. This one was actually the game right after the lobby tournaments. Like I stopped playing the main video and then I played the game before I went to bed. And this was kind of the game I got. I was doing lobby matches for the daily quest after reset, and I was paired with this master or diamond rank for his player. I was like, holy shit, I'm only testing my deck. And it's a master. And so I was wondering how he would go. And it kind of like we drew all the cards and we just beat the master. And I think he was using a top Japanese list. seeing that he ran the rubies and had it early board, but we were just like doing effect damage the entire time. I was like, I'm not interested in playing the long game against Forest. And then the next one is a portal game that I wanted to play. This one was the all-out combo list that I was testing, where we are using cerb's teachings, the 3-cost draw card spell, to dig for our combo pieces. And in this game, it's still like the first game right after the deck was made, and was testing, and we were super efficient with our play points. And so I was kind of surprised. So if you stick all the way till here, thank you for your time and interest. So well, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of had too much watching all the Forest and playing all the Forest games. So after this, I'm gonna throw in some matchups against other crafts that I always wanted, like some Haven matches, Dragon matches, and Mirror matches. Just not Sword, Portal, and Forest anymore. I've kind of had enough of them. And then if you're interested in seeing more of the clips I had while scrimming with a partner, there at the end, I'll put the timestamp in the description. So if you're interested in those, I'll kind of briefly describe each game and put it in the timestamp. So if you're interested, you could go there and watch those. Here I am just talking about Abyss, mid-range Abyss, control Abyss, including combos that give them a chance to face Forest if ever they're brought in a tournament lineup and there are no bans. Or other decks just show up and all of them are like Forest where you're required to kill them by turn 8. I think in the room matchup this is what you want to do too, because there's no way you're going to beat the room player when they do 2 Shikigami's and the freaking 10-10 drop has like 24 or 29 attack, and it's like having Super Evo go Storm face, or you're facing Casidas and the guy plays Astaroth Reckoning on the same turn after Shift. So, that's always fun. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching till this point. I'll try to comment when necessary, I guess, for the later games, and otherwise, tell me. I guess I am also interested in finding out how other crafts deal with deck building, well, mostly deck building, and also how they face Forestcraft. I am looking to go or pivot into Haven, Rune, and Portal. Probably not Sword and Forest. Sword doesn't have heals. I believe, unless I missed some cards. Right now, on my main account, I'm missing 2 Alberts, 2 Orcus for Portal, and 2 Casidas for Rune. If they even run 3 copies of Casidas, I think they run 2 mostly. Otherwise, I have enough legendaries to pivot into other crafts, and I have enough wiles to craft any gold I'm missing. So I've been playing primarily Rev Dragon, and Control Abyss. Right now, my Abyss win count are still lower than my Rev Dragon count, and I only played Rev Dragon till like C rank or C0, and after C0, I've been playing Control Abyss till double A rank. So yeah. And I apologize for the long video. There's kind of a lot of games to go through, and I kind of played all of them at double speed and doubled that after editing too, and still kind of long. So but just to get ideas out there, and hopefully see some feedback, especially on how other crafts deal with Forestcraft, and that's kind of what I want to know when I pivot into other crafts. So yeah. And at the very end, I did include the multiple replays where the Forestcraft were still able to kill me, either because I rigged, the break being not keeping Cerberus in the mulligans, or they were able to kill me before turn 8, so I couldn't even drop my Cerberus. So if we were talking about killing Forest before turn 8, then we need like a better, cheaper budget aggro deck, I guess. And as for Abysscraft, I think with the current cards release, I think this is it. Unless I'm going into aggro Abyss, there's not much to talk about. So that's gonna be the content. Thank you for hanging out and watching. Let me know any feedbacks. So thank you.